Hi, I manage integrations at Quaver Ed, and we are submitting our app for verification with Google. Before I dive into the demo, I want to introduce our company and provide some context for our app. We are an educational resource provider, and we support over 2,000 school districts, 11,000 schools, 16,000 teachers, and millions of students. Our focus is on elementary education, and our top user group is music teachers and their students. Students these days have dozens of apps they are expected to sign into for school, and for young children, that's easier said than done. We offer sign-in with Google to make things a lot easier for our users, as students and teachers can provision accounts into our program without needing separate credentials. We also offer roster syncing functionality from Google Classroom. This makes it easier for the many teachers using Google Classroom to get the most out of Quaver without needing to double their class administration efforts, as classes and rosters are automatically synced in our system. It's important to note that access to Quaver requires the purchase of a teacher license. Users can't simply sign up for an account with Quaver on their own, as access codes are required. Furthermore, individual Quaver teachers, even licensed ones, cannot enable roster syncing with Google Classroom and Quaver on their own. This has to be requested and authorized by the school or district's IT department. We only set up Google Classroom roster syncing with that authorization, and we do so by mapping the school district's Google email domains in our system. We then sort users incoming through Google by Google email domain to determine whether or not they are in a district where Google Classroom roster syncing is activated. We only request the Google Classroom scopes for users in districts where this has been authorized and enabled. I give all this context to make it clear that a lot of explicit intent must be expressed before we capture Google Classroom data for any user. Also, as an educational app, we are well versed in data security regulations and best practices. We are compliant with FERPA, COPPA, and all other regulations related to student data security. All sensitive user data, such as personally identifiable information, is collected securely and stored encrypted in place. With this in mind, I'm going to walk through how we use Google Classroom data with our application. I'm starting by logging in as a demo teacher account using our native login panel. You'll see when I navigate to the Teacher Administration area of our application, I don't have any classes or rosters set up. Of course, I could set them up manually in our application, but that can be a significant burden for teachers, especially for music teachers who often teach every student in the school. Now I'm going to demonstrate using Sign In with Google to get into my Quaver teacher account. At this point, my school district has not been set up to sync rosters with Google Classroom, so you won't see me prompted for any additional scopes. I'm just using my Google account to log in. You can see our client ID in the URL bar. Since this is my first time coming through Google, I've hit Quaver's single sign-on account provisioning page. This page allows me to either click Yes to link my Google account to an existing Quaver account, or click No to start fresh and create a new Quaver account and link my Google account to that. Since I already have a teacher account, I'll go ahead and click Yes and enter my existing Quaver credentials. I'll only have to do this once, and my Google account will stay linked to this Quaver account. Now, when I go to my teacher admin area, I still don't have any classes or rosters. This is because my district has not been enabled for Google Classroom roster syncing yet. Now, if I go to Google Classroom and a new tab, you'll see that I have classes in Google Classroom already set up. These first two classes are the classes where I am a teacher, as you can see from the counts of students enrolled. I want these Google Classroom classes to sync with Quaver, so I tell my school district's IT team that I'd like to sync Google Classroom with Quaver. If they approve, then they can reach out to Quaver's integration team and authorize this functionality, and Quaver's integrations team will enable this for my district. Remember that Quaver only enables Google Classroom syncing by email domain, so that it's only turned on for teachers who come through Sign In with Google with a district domain that is enabled. Now my school district's IT team and Quaver have enabled Google Classroom syncing for my district. So now when I use Sign In with Google to get into Quaver, I'll see a different workflow. I sign in with my district account. For demo purposes, the quavermusic.com domain has been set up as a demo district with Google Classroom roster syncing enabled. And now I'm going to see this screen. Obviously, we're hoping this won't be here soon. So I'll go ahead and proceed for now. And then I'll be prompted to share 3 scopes: my students' Google emails, my class rosters, and my classes themselves. Then I'll review all of this, click Allow, and then I'll be taken into my account. So now if I go to my teacher admin area, I'll see that my Google Classroom classes are there. So those are the 2 classes we saw in Google Classroom. And if I go to the student area, you'll see that there's some people enrolled in those classes. I have some students that got pulled in from Google Classroom. And now I'm going to go to the assignments area and go ahead and give out an assignment to this class. I want to demonstrate this so you can see what it looks like on the student side in a moment. We'll say this was assigned Friday, due Monday, and now that's been given. So now my colleague is going to use Sign In with Google to log into her demo student account, which is enrolled in my class from Google Classroom. So she will click Sign In with Google, but again, she won't be prompted for extra scopes since she's not a teacher where we need to pull any extra data. She'll simply click No on our account provisioning page to start with a fresh account in Quaver. And because we synced her with the Google Classroom data, she has automatically been enrolled in that class and been granted student access to our program. She can click the Assignments button to see the assignment I assigned to that class just a few minutes ago. So this all demonstrates how we use the Google Classroom classes and roster scopes. It's harder to visibly demonstrate how and why we are using the scope to retrieve the student emails from Google Classroom, so I want to explain that clearly now. Obviously, to make the Google Classroom roster syncing functionality work for both students and teachers, we need to be able to match students that log in using Sign In with Google to the students in the teacher's roster that was synced from Google Classroom. We match students to the rosters using their Google email address. We do understand that in a vacuum, we could use the Google OpenID value to match users. If we only ever had to connect Google users with Google student rosters, that would be fine. In fact, it was originally how we programmed our application. However, this does not work well when school districts are moving to Google Classroom after using a different external authentication method or learning management system to connect with us in the past. For instance, many districts we work with have used an application called Clever to access Quaver in the past. That means that all of their students have provisioned accounts in our system from Clever. Now this year, more and more districts are moving to Google Classroom as they want to use a more robust learning management system to support all of the hybrid learning taking place this year due to COVID. There is no way for us to directly associate a Clever user ID to a Google OpenID. Therefore, if we only have access to OpenIDs from Google, all of their users would have to start fresh in our system. They would have to choose to either give up all their historical account data in order to use Google Classroom with us, or allow users to continue using their same Quaver accounts but not be able to sync with Google Classroom. By leveraging the student email scope, we can use the email address as a pivot value. Clever provides emails for users as well, so we can translate Clever users to Google users by pivoting on email. This is extremely critical and valuable to school districts so that they can move to using Google Classroom with Quaver while allowing their users to continue seamlessly using the same Quaver accounts that they have been using for years. This clever to Google move is just one example, but we have found time and time again that email is the most reliable pivot value between data systems. Thus, capturing student emails is vital to our ability to provide a seamless experience to our users, no matter which authentication system or learning management system they want to use this year. And again, this data is only captured at all when approved by the school or district authority. I hope that we have been able to adequately explain how we use each scope and express our diligence and conscientiousness when it comes to handling user data, as it is something we do with great care. Please let us know if there is anything else needed to get us verified with Google.